Vela sat stiffly in the meeting hall, her sharp golden eyes scanning the room filled with humans. Their faces, their voices, their movements, everything about them made her uneasy. She did not trust them. She did not like them. As a diplomat of the Zyran Empire, she had been trained to control her emotions, to remain calm in the presence of those she disliked. But humans, they were different. They were unpredictable, loud, and dangerous. Their history was filled with wars, greed, and destruction. Vela had studied their past, and she knew they were capable of terrible things. And yet, here she was, forced to negotiate with them. The Zyran and humans had fought a long war years ago. Many lives were lost on both sides, and Vela still remembered the pain her people had suffered. The thought of working with humans made her sick, but the Zyran Council had ordered her to come to Earth for this peace negotiation. She had no choice. A deep voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Ambassador Vela," a human male said, offering his hand for a handshake. "I'm Ryan, your assigned representative for these negotiations." Vela did not take his hand. Instead, she folded her arms across her chest and nodded coldly. "I do not need introductions, human. Let us begin." Ryan didn't seem offended by her tone. He simply pulled back his hand and smiled politely. "All right, let's get started then." Vela studied him carefully. He was tall, with dark brown hair and light blue eyes. Unlike other humans in the room, he did not try to impress her with fake kindness or unnecessary words. He was calm, patient, and focused. Still, Vela refused to let her guard down. The meeting began. Human and Zyran officials sat across from each other, discussing trade agreements, border security, and future cooperation. Vela listened, but her mind was elsewhere. She watched how the humans spoke, how they looked at each other. Some were serious, some smiled, some whispered among themselves. Their expressions changed so easily, as if they wore masks that could shift at any moment. She found it strange. Zyran faces did not change much. Her people spoke with logic, not emotion. Humans, however, were full of emotion, and that made them dangerous. Hours passed. The discussion continued, but Vela found herself growing restless. She wanted to leave. She wanted to return to the safety of her own world, where humans did not exist. Then Ryan spoke again. "Ambassador Vela, you've been quiet. Do you have any concerns about the proposal?" Vela narrowed her eyes. "Concerns? My concern is that your people cannot be trusted. You speak of peace, but history shows that humans only bring destruction." The room fell silent. The human officials looked at her with mixed expressions, some offended, some annoyed, and some simply curious. Ryan, however, did not react with anger. He met her gaze and said, "History also shows that we can change." Vela scoffed. "Change? A dangerous beast does not change. It only hides its claws until the right moment." Ryan sighed but did not argue. Instead, he leaned back in his chair. "I guess we'll have to prove you wrong, then." Vela did not respond. She had no interest in believing his words. As far as she was concerned, no human could prove her wrong. When the meeting finally ended, Vela stood and left the room quickly. She needed space, away from these creatures. She walked through the glass corridors of the human embassy, looking out at the bright blue sky of Earth. The planet was beautiful, she admitted, but beauty meant nothing if the people who lived there were unworthy. She clenched her fists. This mission would be over soon. She only needed to endure a little longer. But deep down, she had a feeling, one she did not want to admit. Something was going to change, and she was not sure if she would like it. Vela walked through the long corridors of the human embassy, her steps quick and sharp. The meeting had ended, but her irritation remained. The humans spoke of peace, but she could not trust their words. Their history was filled with war and destruction. She did not believe they had changed. She stopped near a large window and looked outside. The city stretched far and wide, filled with tall buildings and moving vehicles. Humans walked in every direction, laughing, talking, living their lives, as if they had not caused so much pain in the past. Her people, the Siren, were different. They valued order and discipline. They did not waste time on unnecessary emotions. Humans, however, were full of emotions, and that made them unpredictable. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You left the meeting early," Ryan said, walking up beside her. Vela frowned but did not turn to face him. The discussion was pointless. "My decision has not changed." Ryan let out a small sigh. "You haven't even given us a chance." Vela finally turned to him, her golden eyes cold. "A chance? My people gave humans a chance before. And what did they get? War. Destruction. We do not need to repeat the same mistake." Ryan studied her for a moment, then crossed his arms. "Not all humans are the same. You judge us by the past, but you refuse to see the present." Vela scoffed. "The present is only a shadow of the past. Your kind may act peaceful now, but I see through your deception." Ryan chuckled, surprising her. "You think we're pretending? That's a lot of effort for a lie." Vela did not understand his amusement. Did he not care about her words? Did he not realize how dangerous his people were? Ryan leaned against the window, looking out at the city. "I won't try to change your mind, Ambassador, but I do have a job to do. Since we are working together, I think we should at least try to be civil." Vela narrowed her eyes. "Civil? Yes," Ryan said. "No more sharp insults, no more glaring, and no more calling humans dangerous beasts." He smiled slightly. "That last one was a little harsh." Vela crossed her arms. "I only speak the truth." Ryan shook his head. "You speak your belief, not the truth." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt like a battle of unspoken words. Then Ryan glanced at her and said, "Why did you become a diplomat?" Vela frowned. "That is none of your concern." Ryan shrugged. "Just curious. Most people choose diplomacy because they believe in peace. But you don't seem to believe in it at all." Vela turned away. "My personal reasons do not matter. My duty is to my people." Ryan nodded. "Fair enough." Silence again. But this time, it was not as heavy. After a moment, Ryan pushed himself away from the window. "Tomorrow, there's another meeting. I hope you'll actually stay for the full discussion." Vela gave him a sharp look. "I will stay as long as it is necessary." Ryan smiled again. "Good enough." Then, without another word, he walked away, leaving Vela standing by the window, her mind full of thoughts she did not want to have. She hated humans. She had always hated them. But Ryan, something about him was different, and she did not know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Vela sat at the long conference table, her hands resting stiffly on the smooth surface. Another day, another pointless meeting. The human officials spoke in calm voices, explaining their proposals. But Vela barely listened. She already knew her answer. No matter how kind or patient they seemed, she would not trust them. Ryan sat across from her, his blue eyes focused on the discussion. Unlike the other humans, he did not try to impress her with fake politeness. He simply did his job, speaking when necessary, listening when needed. That did not change Vela's opinion of him. He was still human. He was still untrustworthy. Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the building. The lights flickered, and the walls trembled. A second blast followed, sending a wave of dust and smoke through the room. People screamed. Some fell to the ground, covering their heads. Vela stood quickly, her body tensed for danger. What was that? One of the human officials shouted. Ryan was already moving. He grabbed a communication device from his pocket. Security. Report. Static. No response. Vela's sharp eyes scanned the room. This was not an accident, she said. We are under attack. Ryan nodded grimly. We need to evacuate. Before anyone could move, another explosion rocked the building. The ceiling cracked, and debris fell. The walls shuddered, and the emergency lights flickered red. A metal beam collapsed between Vela and the others, cutting her off from the main group. Through the dust, she saw Ryan on the other side. His gaze locked onto hers. "Stay there," he called. "I'll find another way around." Vela clenched her jaw. Stay there. She was not some helpless diplomat. She was Zurin. She could handle herself. Ignoring Ryan's words, she turned and ran through the damaged hallway, her sharp senses guiding her through the smoke. The sound of alarms and distant shouting filled the air. The attack was still happening, but who was behind it? Before she could think further, the ground beneath her shook violently. The floor cracked, and suddenly, she was falling. She hit the lower floor with a painful thud, dust filling her lungs. A groan of pain escaped her lips, but she forced herself to sit up. Nothing felt broken. She could still move. Then, footsteps. Someone was coming. She tensed, ready for a fight, until she saw Ryan appear through the dust. He coughed and wiped his face. "You really don't listen, do you?" Vela frowned. "You took too long." Ryan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Come on, we need to move. Whoever did this might still be here." Vela hesitated. She did not want to rely on a human. But in this moment, she had no choice. She gave a short nod. "Fine, but do not slow me down." Together, they navigated through the wreckage. The building groaned around them, metal beams creaking, walls cracked and unstable. They had to be careful. Ryan led the way, his movements sure and steady. Vela followed, keeping alert. She did not trust him, but she had to admit, he handled danger well. They reached a blocked exit. A large piece of debris covered the door. Vela pressed her hand against it, testing its weight. It was heavy, but not impossible to move. "Help me push," she ordered. Ryan nodded, and together they pushed against the debris. Muscles strained, breath heavy, but slowly the obstruction moved. Finally, with a loud crash, it fell to the side, clearing the way. Ryan grinned. "Not bad, Ambassador." Vela ignored the strange warmth in her chest. "Let's keep moving." They stepped outside into the smoky air. The sky was filled with dark clouds, emergency sirens blaring in the distance. The attack had caused real damage. Ryan turned to her. "We need to find out who's behind this." Vela met his gaze. For the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. Not just determination, but trust. And for a reason she could not explain, she did not look away. Vela and Ryan moved quickly through the damaged streets. Smoke filled the air, and the distant sound of sirens echoed through the city. Whoever had attacked the embassy was still unknown, but the destruction was clear. Buildings were damaged, and civilians ran for safety. The attack had not just targeted the diplomats. It had hurt innocent people too. Vela's golden eyes scanned the area. "Your security is weak," she said, her voice sharp. "An attack like this should not have happened." Ryan sighed. "I won't argue with that. But right now, we need to focus on surviving." They reached a side street where the air was clearer. Vela took a deep breath, her mind racing with questions. Who had done this? Was it a human faction? A Zyran enemy? Or was someone trying to stop the peace talks? Ryan suddenly stopped. His body tensed, and he held up a hand. "Wait." Vela turned to see what he was looking at. A few feet away, near a collapsed wall, a small figure was trapped under debris. A human child. The child whimpered, his arms shaking as he tried to free himself. His clothes were torn, and his face was covered in dirt and fear. Vela stiffened. She had seen injured soldiers, wounded warriors, but she had never stopped for a human child before. Without hesitation, Ryan ran forward. He dropped to his knees beside the boy. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here to help." The child's wide eyes filled with tears. I can't move." Ryan placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "We'll get you out. Just hold on." Vela hesitated. This was a waste of time. Their priority was finding out who attacked them, not saving a single human child. Yet, she did not move away. Ryan tried to lift the debris, but it was too heavy. He turned to her. "I need your help." Vela stared at him. "You are risking your life for this." Ryan met her gaze, his expression firm. "He's just a kid, Vela. He's not part of your war. He's just a kid." Vela clenched her jaw. She did not understand why Ryan cared so much. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at the child, made her pause. With a sigh, she stepped forward. "Move aside." Ryan did as she said. Vela placed her hands on the large debris. Zarin were stronger than humans, and she knew she could lift it. Taking a deep breath, she pushed with all her strength. The heavy stone shifted. Slowly, she lifted it enough for Ryan to pull the boy free. As soon as the child was safe, Vela dropped the debris. It hit the ground with a loud thud. She turned to see Ryan checking the boy's injuries. "You're okay now," Ryan said gently. "Can you walk?" The child nodded weakly. Ryan smiled. "Good. Let's get you somewhere safe." Vela watched silently. Humans were strange. She had believed they only cared for power, for war, for themselves. But here was Ryan, risking his life for someone weak, someone who could give him nothing in return. She had never seen a human like this before. As Ryan lifted the child onto his back, he turned to Vela. "I know you think humans are all bad," he said, his voice softer than before. "But you can't judge an entire species based on the past." Vela said nothing. She didn't want to admit it, but something inside her was changing. They continued walking, the child resting against Ryan's shoulder. Vela glanced at Ryan once more. He was not like the humans she had imagined. And for the first time she wondered, had she been wrong? Vela and Ryan walked through the quiet alleyways, keeping away from the main roads. The city was still in chaos, with sirens wailing in the distance and emergency lights flashing across the skyline. The attack had shaken everyone, but the enemy had not revealed themselves yet. Ryan carried the injured child on his back, his steps steady despite his exhaustion. The boy had stopped crying, though he still clung to Ryan's shirt, his small hands shaking. Vela walked beside them, her golden eyes scanning every shadow. The situation still confused her. Why had she helped? Why had she wasted time saving one human child when her mission was far greater? She told herself it was logical. The child would not have survived without her strength. But deep inside, another thought lurked, one she did not want to face. Had she helped because she cared? Vela shook off the thought. "Where are we going?" she asked. Ryan adjusted his hold on the child. "There's a safe zone near the central district. We'll leave him with the medics, then figure out our next move." Vela nodded but stayed silent. After a few minutes, they reached a small shelter. The entrance was guarded by human soldiers, their faces tense with worry. When they saw Ryan, their expressions turned to relief. "Sir, you're alive," one of them said. "We lost communication with the embassy." Ryan nodded. "Yeah, it was bad. We don't know who attacked us yet." He carefully handed the child to one of the medics. "Take care of him." The medic nodded. "We will." As the boy was carried inside, Ryan let out a breath. His shoulders relaxed slightly, but his face remained serious. Vela watched him. "Why do you do this?" she asked. Ryan glanced at her. "Do what?" "Risk your life for others. This child is not your family. These people are not your responsibility. Yet you act as if they are." Ryan was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed. "I guess that's just who I am." He turned to face her fully. "I don't believe in leaving people behind. If I can help, I do." Vela frowned. His answer did not make sense. In her culture, warriors protected their own. But Ryan was not a warrior. He was a diplomat. Why did he care so much? She studied him carefully. "I do not understand you, Ryan." Ryan smirked slightly. "Well, I don't understand you either, Ambassador." Vela crossed her arms. "I have been raised to believe humans are dangerous. that you destroy everything you touch." Ryan's expression grew serious. "Some humans are like that, but not all of us." Vela hesitated. The past could not be erased. Her people had suffered because of human wars. But Ryan, he was not like the humans she had read about in history reports. Before she could say more, a loud noise echoed through the alley. Both Vela and Ryan turned sharply. Footsteps. They weren't alone. Ryan pulled out a small weapon from his belt. "Stay close," he whispered. Vela did not need to be told. She had already shifted into a defensive stance. Her Zarin instincts kicked in, her body ready for a fight. From the shadows, figures emerged. They were not human soldiers, nor Zarin warriors. They wore dark uniforms, their faces hidden by masks. One of them stepped forward, raising a weapon. "You shouldn't have survived the attack." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "So it was you." Vela's hands curled into fists. "Who are they?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Mercenaries. Someone hired them to stop the peace talks." The leader of the masked figures laughed. "Smart, human. But now, you and your alien friend will not leave here alive." Vela's eyes flashed. Her muscles tensed, ready to strike. Ryan glanced at her, a small smirk on his lips. "Looks like we'll have to work together again." Vela let out a slow breath. For the first time, she didn't mind the idea. "Try to keep up, human." And with that, the fight began. The air was tense. The masked mercenaries stood in a semicircle, weapons raised, blocking the only exit. Vela and Ryan stood back to back, ready for a fight. Vela's sharp eyes scanned the enemies. They were well trained, standing in formation, their fingers steady on their triggers. But she was Zarin, a race built for combat. They had no idea who they were facing. Ryan tightened his grip on his small weapon. "Any ideas?" he muttered. "Yes," Vela replied calmly. "We take them down." Ryan let out a short chuckle. "Simple plan." Before the mercenaries could fire, Vela moved. With lightning speed, she lunged at the closest enemy. Her powerful arm struck his weapon, knocking it away. She followed with a sharp kick, sending him crashing into the wall. The fight had begun. Ryan dodged to the side as a shot fired past him. He aimed quickly and fired back, hitting an enemy in the shoulder. The man fell with a grunt, his weapon clattering to the ground. Another mercenary rushed toward Ryan, swinging a blade. Ryan barely dodged in time, rolling to the side. Before the attacker could strike again, Vela grabbed him from behind and threw him across the alley like he weighed nothing. Ryan exhaled. "Remind me never to make you angry." Vela didn't respond. She was already moving to the next enemy. One of the masked figures aimed a weapon at her, but she was faster. She ducked low, spun, and knocked his legs out from under him. Before he could recover, she delivered a final blow, knocking him unconscious. The last two mercenaries hesitated. They had expected an easy mission, not a battle against a Zarin and a skilled human. Ryan smirked. "Still want to fight?" One of them cursed and threw down his weapon. The other quickly followed, raising his hands in surrender. Vela grabbed the leader by the collar, lifting him slightly. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man struggled but did not answer. Ryan stepped forward. "You have two choices. Talk now, or we hand you over to the authorities." The mercenary hesitated, then sighed. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about stopping the peace talks. Someone wants war." Vela's eyes narrowed. "Who?" The mercenary shook his head. "I don't know. We were just hired to make sure the talks failed. But if you want my advice, run, because whoever is behind this, they won't stop." Vela and Ryan exchanged glances. This was bigger than they thought. Ryan turned back to the mercenary. "We're not running." The man sighed. "Then you're already dead." Vela released him, and he slumped to the ground. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, that was helpful." Vela crossed her arms. "We must report this." Ryan nodded. "Agreed. But first, we need to get out of here before more of them show up. They left the alley, moving quickly through the darkened streets. As they walked, Vela glanced at Ryan. She had fought beside many warriors before, but never a human. He was not as fast as a siren, not as strong, but he was smart, quick, and fearless. For the first time, she saw him as something other than an enemy. Ryan looked at her and smiled. Not bad for our first team-up. Vela hesitated, then gave a small nod. You did not slow me down. Ryan laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. They had survived the attack, but the real fight was just beginning. Vela and Ryan moved quickly through the ruined streets. The city was still in chaos, and the attack had left people scared and confused. But Vela and Ryan had no time to stop. They had learned something important. Someone wanted war, and they were willing to kill to make sure the peace talks failed. Ryan glanced at Vela. We need to reach Commander Holt. He needs to know what we found out. Vela nodded. And I must contact my people. If there is a greater enemy behind this, we cannot fight alone. Ryan agreed. They hurried through back alleys, avoiding large crowds and security patrols. The attack had put the city on high alert, and every soldier was looking for enemies. If they were caught now, they might not get the chance to warn anyone. After a long walk, they reached a small communications center hidden in an underground bunker. It was one of the secret safe zones for diplomats. Ryan quickly entered the access code, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside, the bunker was dimly lit, with screens flashing urgent messages about the attack. A few officers were inside, working quickly to organize emergency responses. Commander Holt, a tall man with graying hair and a sharp gaze, turned when Ryan and Vela entered. His eyes widened. Ryan, Ambassador Vela, you're alive. Ryan nodded. Barely, but we have information you need to hear. Vela stepped forward. The attack was not just an isolated event. We captured one of the attackers, and he admitted that someone is trying to start a war. Commander Holt's expression hardened. Do you know who? Ryan shook his head. No, the mercenaries were just hired to cause destruction and make sure the peace talks failed. But whoever is behind this has resources. This was planned. Holt sighed, rubbing his forehead. This is bad. If we don't act fast, both sides will blame each other. The treaty will fall apart, and war will be unavoidable. Vela's voice was firm. That cannot happen. Holt nodded. Agreed. We need proof of who is really behind this. One of the officers nearby suddenly spoke. Sir, we intercepted a strange transmission during the attack. It wasn't from the human military or the Zyran forces. Holt turned. Put it on screen. The officer pressed a few buttons, and a distorted message played. The voice was scrambled, making it impossible to tell if it was human or alien. Phase 1 complete. Continue the operation. Peace must not be allowed. Vela's eyes narrowed. That is proof. Holt's face was grim. Yes, but not enough. We need to know who sent it. Ryan thought for a moment. There must be a way to track it. Whoever sent this had to be close during the attack. The officer nodded. It will take time, but we can try to trace the origin. Vela crossed her arms. Time is something we do not have. Ryan agreed. The Zyran government is probably already considering retaliation. If they believe humans attack their people, they'll prepare for war. Holt's expression was serious. Then we stop them before it's too late. Vela hesitated for a moment. This was not just a human problem. This affected her people too. If war started, it would destroy both sides. She took a deep breath and looked at Ryan. I must speak to my leaders. They will not trust a human, but they will listen to me. Ryan met her gaze. Are you sure? After everything, will they believe you? Vela's expression softened slightly. I do not know, but I must try. Commander Holt nodded. We'll help you get to them. But be careful, Ambassador. If the enemy knows we're getting close, They will try to stop us. Vela's voice was steady. Let them try. Ryan smirked. That's the spirit. As the officers worked to trace the message, Vela and Ryan prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, stopping a war before it even began. But deep in her heart, Vela felt something strange. She had always hated humans. She had believed they were the enemy. But Ryan, he was different. And for the first time, she wondered if everything she had been taught about humans was wrong. Vela and Ryan left the bunker before dawn, moving quickly through the quiet streets. The city was still on high alert, but the worst of the chaos had settled. The attack had left behind damage, confusion, and fear, exactly what the unknown enemy wanted. Their mission was clear. Vela had to reach the Zyran High Command before war became inevitable. The humans were already preparing for defense, and the Zyran forces would not wait long before retaliating. If she failed, everything would be lost. Ryan walked beside her, his expression serious. Do you think your people will listen to you? Vela hesitated. I do not know. I was raised to believe humans are dangerous. The High Command has believed it for many years. She glanced at him. But I was wrong about humans. Ryan smirked. I'll take that as a compliment. She ignored his teasing tone. But even if they listen to me, they will need proof. The enemy has planned this carefully. Words alone will not stop this war. Ryan nodded. That's why we need to find the source of the transmission. Commander Holt and his team were working on tracking the unknown message, but there was no time to wait. Vela had to go now. They approached the transport station, where ships were waiting for departure. Vela had arranged for a Zyran diplomatic shuttle to take her to the warship Vashtorin, where High Command would be meeting. But the journey would not be safe. Ryan slowed his steps. You should go alone. Vela stopped, her golden eyes narrowing. What? Ryan crossed his arms. If I go with you, they won't trust anything you say. I'm human. They'll see me as the enemy. Vela felt something strange in her chest, a feeling she could not explain. She did not want to leave Ryan behind. But he was right. She clenched her fists. I do not like this. Ryan grinned. That means we're even. I don't like it either. A voice crackled through Ryan's communicator. Ryan, we have a lead. The transmission came from inside the city. Ryan's eyes widened. What? The enemy is still here. Yes, we're sending coordinates. Ryan turned to Vela. You go to the High Command. I'll track down the enemy. Vela felt torn. She had fought beside Ryan. She trusted him. But now they had to split up, and it made her uneasy. She stepped closer to him. Be careful. Ryan smirked. Worried about me? Vela's voice was firm. I do not like wasting useful allies. Ryan chuckled. Right, just an ally. She ignored the strange warmth in her chest and turned toward the shuttle. As she walked away, Ryan watched her go. Then he took a deep breath and headed toward danger. He had a war to stop. Vela sat inside the Zyran diplomatic shuttle, her mind restless. She had always believed humans were dangerous, but Ryan had proved her wrong. Now she was about to face the Zyran High Command alone, trying to convince them that humans were not the enemy. The ship docked inside the massive warship Vashtorin, where the High Command was already in an emergency meeting. As soon as Vela stepped inside the Grand Hall, all eyes turned to her. The Zyran leaders sat in their high chairs, their expressions cold and unreadable. The Supreme Commander, an elder Zyran with sharp silver eyes, spoke first. Ambassador Vela, you survived the human attack. You bring news. Vela stood tall. Yes, but it was not the humans who attacked us. A murmur spread through the room. One of the council members scoffed. Impossible. Who else would want war? Vela took a deep breath. The real enemy is hiding in the shadows, manipulating both sides. They hired mercenaries to attack the peace summit and blame the humans. If we act without proof, we will be doing exactly what they want. The Supreme Commander narrowed his eyes. Do you have proof of this claim? Vela hesitated. At that moment, her communicator buzzed. Ryan's voice came through. Vela, I found them. She stepped away slightly and lowered her voice. Where are you? Inside an abandoned facility near the city. The enemy is still here, controlling the situation. They're planning more attacks. I have proof, but I need backup. Vela clenched her fists. Hold on. I will. Crash. A loud sound came through the communicator, followed by Ryan's sharp breathing. They found me. The signal cut off. Vela's heart pounded. She turned back to the high command. The enemy is in the human city right now, controlling the situation. One of my contacts is there, gathering proof. The Supreme Commander's expression did not change. And why should we believe this? Human. Vela hesitated. Then she spoke the truth. Because I trust him. The room fell silent. The Supreme Commander studied her for a long moment. Then he stood. We will not act without evidence. Bring us proof, Ambassador. Vela bowed quickly and turned, rushing back to her shuttle. Meanwhile, Ryan was fighting for his life. The facility was dark, filled with rusted machines and broken equipment. The real enemy, cloaked figures with advanced weapons, had surrounded him. Ryan ducked behind a crate as energy blasts flew past him. Really wish I had backup right now, he muttered. He peeked around the corner, spotting the leader, a tall figure speaking into a communicator. We have been exposed. Begin the final phase. Ryan gritted his teeth. Whatever their plan was, he had to stop it. Just then, a loud explosion rocked the building. The doors blasted open, and Xiran warriors stormed in. Ryan grinned. About time. At the front of the warriors was Vela. She moved like lightning, taking down enemies with precise strikes. Ryan fought beside her, dodging blasts and returning fire. Together, they pushed forward, until Vela grabbed the enemy leader by the collar. Who are you? The figure struggled but finally spoke. You are too late. War is coming. Vela narrowed her eyes. Not today. With one swift motion, she knocked him unconscious. Ryan picked up a data pad from the floor. This has everything. Names, locations, proof that they set this up. Vela exhaled. Then we end this. Hours later, the truth was revealed to both human and Xiran leaders. The peace treaty was saved. The real enemy, an extremist group that wanted endless war, was captured. As Vela and Ryan stood on the balcony of the diplomatic hall, watching the sunrise, Ryan smirked. Well, that was fun. Vela gave him a rare smile. You are not a bad ally. Ryan chuckled. Just an ally. Vela didn't answer. Instead, she simply looked at him, a strange warmth in her chest. Maybe humans weren't so bad after all. The end.